Hi, everyone. My name is Kirk Bachman, and welcome back to The Ultimate Dish. In today's episode, we're speaking with Jon-Paul Hutchins, a humorous, high-energy culinary veteran with nearly 40 years of experience as an executive chef, instructor, consultant, and entrepreneur. He has been instrumental in shaping the lives and careers of countless students and graduates. Jon-Paul is a vibrant media personality who spent 12 years as a stand-up comedian, a talent that he's used to create dynamic, informational, humorous culinary experience on such shows as the Today Show, Food Network, and HGTV. Today, he works closely with the industry with a super cool company called ShiftPixy, which combines the modern perks of the gig economy with traditional employment benefits. Join us today as we chat with Chef JP about his love for the craft of cooking, teaching aspiring chefs for over 30 years, and launching a new business venture. And there he is. How are you, my friend?
I am I'm getting misty, man. That was quite an introduction.
I need some oxygen. I need some oxygen.
That
I'm
was
exhausted
beautiful.
after that.
I am okay. And cut. We're good. That's a wrap.
I love it, buddy.
I'll send this to my mom.
You should. You should. Gosh, can I just tell you? I mean, talk about getting gushy and emotional. Wow, this is such a pleasure for me. It's been a long pandemic. It's been a lot of years. You and I spent a lot of years working together. People will know almost immediately that we've met, that we've embraced. But can I tell you, honestly, right off the bat, from the bottom of my heart, you are that one person, that one contact, that first contact for me. When I moved from the industry into education, you'd been there. And I can't thank you enough. And if I haven't said it enough, shame on me, for how open, friendly, real, funny, and just thoughtful you are and have been since the day I met you. And I'm going to say that was 1999, just gave the age away. But I 100% sincerely mean that. I refer to you, JP, as a gentleman chef, and I love you with all my heart. So I am so pumped up for today.
I'm super excited just to reconnect with you. And in our history, I want to thank you for taking all the jobs that would have gotten me fired. So
exactly. I was there for you. I was there for you.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the phone calls where it's like you would call me up and you're like, what did you do? It's like they're stretching your neck out again across the cutting block. What did you do? And I'm like,
and you always had a six-pack of Visine for me. You always had a six-pack of Visine for me. Here, you need this. Get this in your eyes. Get this in your eyes right now. Oh my God. But let's talk about you.
Okay.
Let's talk. Are you ready? Are you ready?
I'm ready, man. Let's go.
I want you to start with music. You got the Yankee hat on. I know that's the background. I want to hear about the Ramones. I want to hear about the leather coats. I want to hear about you rocking the streets of New York and then to where you are now, because I happen to know some of that story and it's super, super cool. And I want people to experience that journey. Take me all the way back to New York.
Okay. Well, actually the hat is, I'm a New York City kid, but it's this part that matters. Oh, that's New Jersey.
I love that.
So a lot of people think it's in New York, but it's really in New Jersey. And I am third generation Italian immigrant. So the Statue of Liberty is a big, big deal to me, the promise of the Statue of Liberty. So just to give you a background on what my DNA is like. My mom, she grew up in the Italian section of Newark. I was born in Newark, New Jersey in the Italian sections. My dad was the youngest of 13 from a farm in Indiana where they made more money selling corn liquor than corn. You know, it's what you do.
Probably still do, yeah.
I grew up in Newark, and then the riots came, and we moved to Plainfield, and then the riots came there. And then we moved to Maplewood, and they just stole our cars, but there were no riots. So
I need a tissue. Somebody get me a tissue. Hurry.
Moving on up. You know, so it was an interesting, I mean, when you grow up in a city like that, it becomes a part of you. So when I grew up in Italian kitchens. My mom was a huge cook. My dad loved baking. we used to have Christmas parties that lasted 3 days, like literally 3 days. You would show up with an ornament. People would be asleep on the floor. Once again, this is the early 70s. And I'd be like 9, 10 years old, and there'd be, like the living room table with 100 different bottles of booze on it and food just constantly coming out, just a never ending food. 2 o'clock in the morning, there'd be fondue. And it was a cool lifestyle because amongst the people sleeping on the floor would be like a priest.
Just in case. Yeah.
Lots of, my mom owned art galleries. So she had one in the Watergate and one in New Jersey. So it was lots of artists, of musicians, lots of that stuff.
Super cool.
So I was born with these two people who came kind of from nothing and found that education was the way out. So my dad came out of Indiana, got his bachelor's, got his master's, got his PhD in psychology. My mom ended up with 2 master's degrees. My dad was a school psychologist. My mom was the dean of students at DeVry Tech and RCA Institute. And eventually, I think she was the first female vice president at AT&T. So my mom and dad, they're badasses.
Yeah.
So then I come along. And
are we going to have to edit? Are we going to have to edit here? Okay.
No, but let's just say ADD wasn't invented when I was a kid. So they just called it ants in his pants. So I'm the perpetual D student, right? And a lot of it was attention span, and I would just get bored so easily.
Mm-hmm.
So 13 years old, and 2 things happen in one day. I get my first culinary job. So I get a job as a pot scrubber in a retirement home. And a local band called the Ramones comes to play my high school. So when that happened, literally the next week I was in CBGBs. Like, what's this about? Like, and who else was on the bill? Little Cindy and Blue Angel, who was Cyndi Lauper. So I got to meet all these guys.
Wow.
And ended up touring with the Ramones. Years later, we went to what was called the Monsters of Rock Festival, which is now Donington in England. And it was fun. We flew back. We were in coach because we were the Ramones. Meatloaf was in front with a broken nose because somebody hit him with a full bottle of beer while he was on stage and singing. And Jefferson Starship was just, I don't know, hydrating, I guess.
Yeah.
They were really old. So I had some adventures, but I pretty much, in New Jersey, you either go down the shore or you go into the city, and I was a city kid. So for me, I was I'd say I was born in Newark, but I was raised by the Lower East Side. Okay. So I was one of those kids you'd see all over Greenwich Village and the music stores, going into clubs. We go to the hair salons, and you'd find out you get these little tickets, and it would be pink or green, and there would be a phone number on it, and you'd call at 10 o'clock at night, and they'd tell you where to go, and you'd look for a red light bulb and show up, and there would be this whole world of a club that never existed before. So the 70s and 80s were unbelievable in New York City. I mean, it was just, it never stopped. Yeah. We used to go to rooftop parties, and you would show up on a rooftop, like you play a show, 2 o'clock in the morning, go to a rooftop, and there would be 60 vintage vehicles up there. And they created a drive-in theater on the roof of a building in Manhattan, and you're watching an old 50s movie, and the drinking and the partying and all the rest of it. And then they would just bring all those vehicles down, disperse them. It was crazy.
Unbelievable.
It was a cool time to be a kid and grow up, because you could get in anywhere. It's like now you can't get in everywhere.
Yeah.
We went into Studio 54 through the back, especially when I was cooking, because you knew cooks everywhere. So I got in the back door of like every major restaurant. La Pyramid, I was eating out, by the garbage cans out back, because I had friends working the line, and they'd run you out a plate of food, and you're waiting for them to finish up their shift so you can go out and do your thing. But you're eating like, roulade of squab with a plastic spoon, like sitting on a garbage can.
What is it?
Really cool.
What is it? Like while we're on that, chefs, musicians, motorcycles, fast cars, nightlife, what pirates, what is that all about?
I think they're things that we can individually become experts at, but we work better in groups.
Okay. Okay.
you know? So
Brilliant.
think of a
Yeah.
guy riding a motorcycle and the Hells Angels. They work better as a group, not just the, all right, maybe a poor
So-
analogy,
So
but essentially, but no, I mean, if I'm in a band or if I'm in a kitchen, whatever I do gets exponentially better when I work with better people. I
makes
just
total
get
sense.
better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we're, to me, a mosh pit is just like a kitchen. It's a bunch of these people banging into each other, but they have an intention, and they can be very curt. They can be physical. I've had guys grab me by the shoulder and push me out of the way because they were bringing roasting pans through, and I was too busy doing what I was doing I wasn't hearing them.
So that's perfect right there. What's the denominator? Trust, right? Sense of belonging.
It's trust, but I think in the best kitchens I've been in, the only thing that matters is the plate.
Yeah.
The only thing that matters. If you
Getting
cut
the
yourself,
job done,
burnt yourself. I mean, I've worked on broken feet, I've broken legs, broken hands, 3rd-degree burns. I've had blood poisoning and worked the line, because you have such a commitment to not letting your team down and putting out the best plate. We work like dogs. And then the problem is when you get out of that, there are very few people who will see eye to eye with you on your passion.
Yeah. Yeah.
They love the idea of your passion, but they can't live within your passion because your passion is complete.
So, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute and how you got that across the students. Before we jump over there, that love for music, take me further. That love for music has not gone away, right? Is there a guitar? Do you have a guitar like right around the corner? Like, can you see?
I don't have one right here, but I have one in my hotel room. So I travel with guitars.
There you go. Yeah.
I have 3 different rigs set up in my house, depending on the style of music that I want to play.
Mm-hmm.
So I have like a punk rig. That's the big loud one out in the garage. I've got kind of a trippy synth rig in the house. And then I have one in the kitchen. So literally when I'm cooking, I can have a guitar on.
I love
like
that.
what I think. So some people doodle, you know what I mean, to help them
Yeah.
concentrate. If I strap on a guitar and put on a headset and I need to work through a problem, or if I'm staring at a dish, I'll just keep playing. It'll come to me.
Yeah.
Because it kind of, it's almost like meditation.
Yeah.
So, and I love it. I mean, it's something I can do for the rest of my life. I can be creative forever. It's something where I can share emotion. And there's nothing like it, whether it's music or art. I think everybody needs some creative expression that has no limits.
Did you know that, JP, so you're young, you're traveling with the Ramones, you're having a blast, you're cooking. Did you connect the dots, or was it just, I do this and I do this, but eventually music is who I am and it's made me a better chef or a more creative
actually,
chef?
my mom connected the dots for me.
Okay, there you go.
So I was getting ready to go on
Ants in
tour.
your pants, right? Come over here. I'm going to connect these dots.
Well, no, it was the opposite. She woke me up with a heavy object one afternoon and said,
yeah.
She's like, you got to do something.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm kind of banging her, I'm working in restaurants just like every other musician. And like every other musician, I'm working in restaurants. You know what I mean? We're just, I'm just in this, it's what you do until you get a gig. And I'm getting ready to go on this. It was called Biz. So my stage name was Biz Viva. And I'd played in a band with Biff, Buzz, Spaz, Rhino, Poodle, and me, Biz. So when I split from that band, The Consumers, I wanted to go on a solo tour. So we had Biz Viva's Old Cheese Tour. And at this time, Ronald Reagan was handing out a lot of government cheese and a lot of government sugar and a lot of government flour. So what we did was I had an 18-wheeler and we went to these little towns in upstate New York and Pennsylvania. And we hit state fairs and laundromats. And we hit laundromats because they had so much electricity. And if we played a laundromat, you couldn't leave for 45 minutes because you had to wait for your laundry to be done. So you sat there our whole set.
Captive audience, yeah.
But we would go on these local radio stations that had like 2 watts. And we were like, yeah, you should come to the laundromat or you should come to the show. We're going to have a merch table where we're handing out autographed singles, right? So we're sitting at the table and we're signing craft singles, like cheese singles.
Cheese signal. Oh
So
my
that was the
gosh.
old cheese tour. But we actually blew up a town. We went on, and there were like a lot of high school bands that were opening before us, and they were adorable. And then we show up with an 18-wheeler that's got like thousands of watts of speakers and stuff. So they go on, and then our roadies come up, set up the whole stage. I walk up to the mic and I'm like, this is going to be a good time. And when I say that, it's already louder than anything they've heard.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody pays
So
attention.
then we kick off the first song and we're hitting it hard. I mean, the idea is you're just going to pummel everybody else who showed up that day. And off in the distance, you see a power box just explode. Like it bursts into flames, and the pole that was holding it up catches on fire. And then all of a sudden it becomes an acoustic show.
Yeah.
We browned out an entire town.
Unbelievable.
So yeah, I was like, okay, let's load up. Our job is done here. So I had a blast. I mean, the cool thing about being a musician is, like when my mom, got me up that morning and she was like, baby, I love you. And I know you're going on tour, but there are bands that are better than yours and they're not getting signed. And I was like, Mom, like, you're supposed to be my number one fan. I gave you my first t-shirt from the band, and
it hurts, but it's the truth though, right?
T-shirts. We had, I got to tell you about the t-shirts. We had cheesy t-shirts, and it had, remember when you would have a body and it would be your head, like there would be
oh yeah.
So we had this Biafran body holding a box of Velveeta, and it said Biz Viva's old, and he was wearing a t-shirt that said Biz Viva's old.
Unbelievable.
It was fun.
Do those t-shirts still exist? Oh my God.
I have a couple.
Oh my God.
Actually, if you go on my Instagram, there's one of those shirts is on there.
No way.
You'll see it.
Way.
Cheesy orange. Yeah. My roommate was an artist, so he did all the t-shirts for us.
Oh my gosh.
But my mom basically said, you're not getting signed like this. I love you. And my uncle was, he had a big band in New York. So he had his own big band and he was a drummer. So when I was born, I got one of his drum kits. So I started playing the drums when I was 3, and as a jazz drummer. And then I studied concert violin for a bunch of years, and then found my first guitar and all went to hell. So I had this kind of stream of music education and stuff. But what my mom said was very telling. She said, why don't you go to culinary school? And I'm like what? Like, why would I do that? Mom, I just drank my way out of a freshman year in college. Why would I do that again? I went to college for a bit. It was a bit of a blackout, 17 years old. And it's like, so what do you want to do for the rest of your life? And it's like, I'm going to be a psychologist. And they're like, okay, what do I do with a 4-year degree in psychology? And they're like, you can teach gym. And I'm like, what can I do with a master's? And they're like, you can teach psychology. And I'm like, well, when do I, start playing with brains and stuff? They're like, you need a PhD. And I'm like,
that's a lot of school.
Like 15 years. And I'm like 17 years old. And this, like, I'm making plans for the next, that wasn't.
Yeah.
I was in college because that's what you do after high school, right?
Sure.
So my mom says something that was really incredible. She said, everything you're looking for in rock and roll, you're already getting from food. So during this time, I'm kind of moving up the chain. So now I'm not 13. Now I'm like 18, 19 years old. So she's like, remember that time you had that couple come in and they said, Jon-Paul, it's our anniversary, carte blanche, whatever you want to give us. And then they sent a bottle of champagne back and said it was the best they'd ever had. And then you made a special dish for somebody else. And then the chef ended up putting it on the menu because it's sold. And you're coming home every day, like, I'm crushing it. It's like, but when you talk about your band, it's like your drummer's on speed. Your bass player's girlfriend is just a nightmare and keeps screwing up the tour. There were all these other factors. And she's like, and it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And I had that epiphanal moment where I was like, the psychotic pirates that I'm playing with on stage are the same psychotic pirates that I'm playing with in restaurants. And I went to the Culinary Institute of America, and I wasn't a learner. And that was the thing. So it's for the first time I'm in a school where I actually want to learn, but I don't know how. Like, I have no reading comprehension. My whole life, I've learned stuff because it was going to be on a test on Friday. I had, give you an example. When I was I went to high school, I went to Catholic high school, and I'm not Catholic, which is challenging when you're named Jon-Paul. No, the first one died my freshman year. Jon-Paul 1 dropped dead. And they all looked at me and they're like, so what does Jon-Paul, the non-Catholic, think about that? And I'm like, really? An entire institution is going to roll up on this 17-year-old kid because your Pope didn't take vitamins? What? No, I did like the second one though. But I went there for more structure and more discipline and all the rest of it. And it was just, like, will this be on the test? And I remember asking Father Ferran, because we're doing algebra, and I wasn't doing well. I just didn't care, C's and D, whatever it took to pass. And I raised my hand one day and I said, Father Ferran, I have a question for you. And he said, what's that? And I'm like, I have no idea why I'm learning algebra, but if you could teach me how to balance a checkbook, I know I'm going to need that. If you could teach me how to deal with credit cards, I know I'm going to need that. But algebra, I have absolutely no use for. So give me something pragmatic and practical. And his answer was to send me to the headmaster. But I was just like, I know there's skill sets that I need getting out of here, but until you explain why I need to learn this, I don't have the brain capacity to absorb it. I'm not willing to jump through those hoops just to pass a test. You know what I mean? It's like, why am I doing this? So when I went to culinary school, all of a sudden there was a raison d'etre for everything that I did. It's there because there is a system of cuisine, because there are methods, because there are techniques. And within those methods and techniques, there are variations. And these are things kind of like playing the guitar that I can hone for the rest of my life, but I can also riff on. You know what I mean? Like I can start, if I really master that technique, all I have to do is look at the stages that ingredients go in during that technique or what the preparation is, and I'm limitless. If you invent a spice, I can insert it into these techniques.
Yeah.
And so that kind of blew my mind. So I still kept playing in rock and roll bands. I graduated from culinary school. I got my first chef's position, which was a small 30-seat French bistro in my hometown in Maplewood, New Jersey. And they gave me the executive chef position. I started doing brunch there while I was going to school, took over dinner. And in 2 years, I was the youngest chef to receive stars from the New York Times, which was pretty cool.
Oh,
right?
So how'd your mom react to that? Pretty cool.
It wasn't enough stars. I think I got two stars.
Let me ask you a question. Not to interrupt, but this is fascinating. So there you are in culinary school. It's all kind of coming together, right?
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure you had some great mentors that just kind of got you, right? The light bulb goes out. It all makes sense versus the algebra and the headmaster at the Catholic school and all that other stuff. How did all of that, did that stay with you for 30 years as an educator when you had that same Jon-Paul coming up to you? It never went away. You knew exactly how to address it.
That's why I became a teacher.
I love that.
Because what I realized was there were 90%. All right. So high school is a cognitive learning environment. Okay. Just to kind of get into the psychology of it. It's a cognitive learning environment, which means if I'm really good at reading a book and having that information go in, and then I can put that information back out in a useful way, that's a cognitive learning environment. So when I would talk to my students, I would say, how many of you learn that way? And it'd be about 10% of the students would raise their hands and go, yeah, I get that. And I'm like, exactly. Only 10% of our learners in general are cognitive. The other 90% are kinesthetic learners. So when I thought I had some mental dysfunction, I didn't realize it was only 10% of the hands that were going up whenever a teacher was asking a question. And the rest of us were trying not to make eye contact.
Yeah.
So when right?
Don't call on
you're
me.
just like,
don't call on me.
I remember there was a geometry class and the teacher was like, Jon-Paul, can you come to the board? And I'm like, you don't want that. That's a bad idea right there. Yeah. You want me to sit right here. I'm going to look out the window and then you do whatever geometry you do with someone else. But me going to the board, that's just a bad idea. Now, remember, I'm in Catholic school wearing a motorcycle jacket.
Yeah.
Because they said in Catholic school, that you could wear something other than the school blazer as long as it had lapels. Well, a motorcycle jacket does. So I just put the school patch on the motorcycle jacket. And that's what I wore all the time.
Bingo.
I just suffered no fools. Or I was just too foolish enough to know. So let's see, where was I? All right. So I get my stars from the New York Times and things are going good. And what I was doing was changing my entire menu every week, which is kind of stupid, but I had an owner who would let me do that. So New York Times gives me stars. I like the innovations. Next year, they take all the stars away. They took them away, gone, 0 stars. And what they said was, well, we gave you the stars, you know, not that you were there yet, but we liked what you were doing and we're trying to encourage you to do more. And you've kind of come up with a static menu instead. Well, after the first review came out, I had to put the stuff on my menu that was reviewed. So it went from being a weekly menu to a static menu with some changes. But what it made me realize was right out of culinary school, even though I grew up cooking a lot of food at home and I was a latchkey kid, so I had to make my own meals a lot of times, you know, just out of necessity, that I had exhausted everything I knew. I exhausted everything I knew in those 2 years, and I wasn't ready to be an executive chef. You know, so what I did was I went out and just worked for the best people I could. So I worked on clipper ships, everything. I mean, hotels, mom and pops, caterers, like anybody that I could work for, almost at the lowest level. I wasn't looking for a chef position. I'm like, I just know nothing. I know what I know in school. I know what I know at home, but ultimately, I can make good food, but I don't know anything.
Such great advice, though, for young culinarians, right? Just you've got to explore, you've got to experience, you've got to get out there. What's a clipper ship?
A clipper ship is a 3-masted boat.
And so you're serving food on that?
Yeah.
Nice.
And it's different because like in a kitchen, you have all these French terms and everything like that. On a boat, they have nautical terms for food. So when they yell something like tack down below, that means take whatever you have on the stove and throw it on the floor. That's what it means.
Oh my Lord. Okay.
So my first time in a galley, if you've ever been in a galley, they're usually about the width of somebody with a 34-inch waist.
Okay.
So
that you've got to get around, right? Yeah.
There's 2 cooks in there, and the galley has these little metal bars on the sides of the stove that theoretically has stuff sliding back and forth that keeps it on the stove. But you're in a clipper ship, so the whole boat's going to do this. Like everything's just going to go that way. So the first time the captain yells tack, I'm by the door, and the other 2 cooks are down the galley. These guys literally push me down and using me like a doormat to run over me to get out. And I look up and you see this giant soup pot because we serve soup to I think we had 60 guests on the boat. So we would serve soup at like 2 PM. So you had 60 people's worth of soup boiling away on top of this French top. And this thing comes sliding at you, man. And it's just, I got out of the door and you just saw, I don't know, 6 hours worth of diced vegetables.
Oh
just
my gosh.
flooding the hallways. It was amazing. I catered for people like Bon Jovi and Bruce Springsteen and guys like that. I worked for a large catering house in South Jersey. We used to do cruises around Manhattan. So that was the boat stuff. But then, you know, I just wanted to see it all. You know, there's so many different ways that you can eat. And I realized it wasn't just the restaurant.
Pull the because I'm dying here. I mean, obviously you're humorous, right? Pull the stand-up comedian gigs into this. When did that all? I mean, that's over a decade, right? So are you doing that on top of cooking, on top of culinary school?
Yeah.
Or
so that's all. So when I was in Manhattan, so I go to Culinary Institute, I go out, I get my stars, I lose my stars, I work around a bit. And then I had dinner at the New York Restaurant School on 34th Street. And I was with my girlfriend and she's like, you should think about being a teacher. And I'm like, no, because I'm a bad student. So bad students. And somehow I auditioned for the job and I got it. And
at the New York Restaurant School.
New York Restaurant School.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got
So
it.
34th and 6th Avenue, Herald Square, where the Gorilla Building is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
World
Yeah.
Trade.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in a year, I realized how sloppy I'd gotten, because I'm yelling at my kids, my students, about wiping their apron off on their or wiping their knife off on their apron.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I look down and I've been wiping my knife off. I mean, so all these shortcuts, all these bad habits that I picked up banging around in the industry are now coming back at me 20-fold through 20 students mimicking everything that I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
I need to make an amends to my first class because I taught them baking, and we were making like bear claws that were the size of a newborn infant. I didn't understand the yeast thing. I didn't have that down yet. Yeah. So baking was exploratory for me the first time. But what happens is, because I was in that school, I had to teach every single class to every, to my students. So you took them from alpha to omega. So it brought out a lot of my strengths. But I had never cut up a goat before, so that was new. I'm like, how do I relate that to beef and pork and all the other stuff? So it was fascinating. While that was happening, I was doing improv. So at that time, I'm doing improv in New York, did improv for about 7-8 years, then went out to Arizona, and improv kind of turned into stand-up. And while I was a teacher, it was great. Filling rooms, we're doing good. I'm opening for guys like Jimmy Fallon and Dave Attell and Brian Regan and Richard Jenny, he's dead now, but he was my absolute hero. So I get to work with these amazing comics. And then I become the director of education. And then I get kids showing up at my class that I might be, or showing up at the theater that I might be dismissing. And they're like, that butt joke you told. And I'm like, yeah, anyway, we got to get your mom on the phone.
Yeah.
So that's when I started doing radio.
Okay.
So
I remember that.
So I had Leslie and I did a radio show. We were in 38 markets, and then we were on the #1 show in Phoenix, Southwest. It was a Clear Channel. We were with Clear Channel for a bit. So I did a bunch of that. And then in the meantime, I'm shooting all kinds of TV. So I'm maybe 1,000 hours of television between, it's like every week I was doing 2 or 3 local shows and stuff like that. So I got fairly popular locally doing that stuff. It was a blast. And what I was doing was, because I was with the school, every time I was doing these shows and every time I was doing stuff like that, I was dragging students with me. Because I'm like, you're going to watch how I do TV, because this is going to become a bigger and bigger part of your future. If you're going to become a chef, like, you have to know, you have to look good. You have to be able to respond to people. You have to know how your lighting is. You have to talk to a producer and show them how you're going to block your shots. Like, we're going to start here, then go here, then go here, 2 seconds, So that was, I think, more fun than actually doing the TV, is watching. And then I would put them on. So if they'd been on 3 or 4, like in the background doing prep, then I drag them up next to me. And it was a blast, because the stations I was working with were just wonderful. So they would allow their parents to come in, they could hang out in the green room. So it was really a cool experience.
So let me, I obviously, I just love this topic. So this bringing joy through laughter to people is really cool. It's a gift, right? It's a gift. And then you're sharing it with your students. You started to go down this path, but talk to me. What about all the students who didn't get the chance to sit next to you? How'd you take comedy and bring that laughter and joy into the kitchen when folks are cooking? Because not everybody gets it right away, right? So did humor become part of your lesson plan, your curriculum?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, because especially, when you have brand new students,
yeah,
they are all the best cooks they know.
Yeah.
Right? Whether they're the best cook out of their crew, and that's why they decided, or they're the best cook at home. So you kind of have to soften that a bit, kind of like me losing my stars. You know what I mean? Every time I think I've arrived, I'm really about 8 or 10 steps from where I want to be, and don't realize that. So I used humor a lot.
Okay.
Kids would perpetually screw stuff up. And my standard phrase was, I burned up stuff you don't even know how to pronounce yet. like, like I burned up everything that you've burned up. I've
Oh my
literally
gosh.
destroyed thousands of pounds of food in discovery. So feel free. It's
Yeah.
okay to make a mistake. It's just not okay to make the same mistake again. Right. So
Any
learn from the mistake.
any unbelievably proud moments during your time? 30 years as an instructor, as a
Yeah.
teacher, with lots of other
About
things.
100,000 kids. We had
Yeah.
about 100,000 kids go through in that time.
Yeah. Like what's going to go in your memoir?
I don't know. I literally cried every graduation day.
Yeah.
I would get so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Um, because I knew them when. Like I knew when they didn't have
Yeah.
confidence.
Yeah.
I knew when they were cocky, and that cockiness was just hiding fear.
That
I
gives me
knew when they
chills.
were,
That gives me chills when I hear that, right? Right?
yeah.
It resonates,
Or
right?
like,
Yeah.
when they're BSing you to save face.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now they're not. Now they've been able to break that down, and they can come to you and say, like, I'm hurting now, or it's, I don't know what to do with this, or I'm up against the wall, instead of trying to, like, when they stopped acting like they were going to regular high school, I
Yeah.
guess. You know what I mean? Like, where everything is
Yeah.
like just getting over. Let me just get over. And so I never have to see this instructor again. And they would eventually start to have this mindset that it's like, this is the rest of my life.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
was a great student my first year in culinary school. My second year, I thought I had it. So my first year, I'm taking notes, I'm rewriting my notes. My second year, I might have had 1 3-ring binder, and I'm back to, will this be on the test? And my
Yeah.
one regret was, I worked with insanely talented European chefs at the CIA, and I did not drill deep enough.
Hmm. Hmm.
I was into whatever girl I was dating. I was into what bar are we going to, like, I just,
Sure. Sure.
so I used to stress that a lot with my kids, that, one of the regrets I have was I should have leaned into it, that would never, ever, ever happen again. I would never be in a situation where I'd be able to make those mistakes, where I would be able to have a mentor that I'm literally paying to tell me the truth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's not like I'm working with a chef and he's withholding ingredients, or, I mean, I've
Yeah.
worked with
Yeah.
guys, who were sauciers, and you just couldn't, if they were out sick, that sauce wasn't happening that night because nobody had the recipe
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
design.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's there's so many things about this business that put you in a corner, that really, I guess, force your lotus to open.
Hmm.
They put you into a point where you can't figure it out. There's too many human elements, and you've got super educated people, you have people with no education, all in the same kitchen, all in this mosh pit, trying to produce a plate full of food.
Hmm.
Everybody with different backgrounds. You might have 3 different languages going on in that kitchen. So how do you get over yourself and start building towards the greater good, which is, I need to harness this team so we're moving like a laser in one direction. How do I do that?
Yeah.
And that's a lot of love. It's a lot of compassion. It's a lot of spending time in the humanity of the
Hmm.
people that you're with, instead of being a manager. If
Yeah.
that makes any
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Well said.
You know,
Well said. Let's weave what you're doing now into all of this. You obviously it's probably 2 careers, maybe 3, that we've talked about, all wrapped up into one, called Jon-Paul. But you're doing some really, really fun stuff now, and I think you're in Miami today. So
I am in Miami.
a very, very, very cool city today, getting cooler all the time.
You should have been here for Formula One, man.
Oh gosh, I can only imagine, only imagine. So tell us a little bit about, I mean, all of the media training
Well, it's a
going.
race where there's 20 cars. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
So what am I doing now? I'm
I
working at
love it.
this really cool place called ShiftPixy Labs. And I can't get too deep into it because we're publicly traded, and all this stuff is kind of
Mhm.
bubbling down beneath. But I'm developing 14 brands, and they will not have dining rooms,
Pause.
but they'll be there when you order. So
Uh,
imagine if this is a ghost kitchen, this is what we're doing. So they're looking at national and international. I mean, I have, in this building, we have everything, AI, AR, graphics teams, everything that you would need for graphics packages. So the ordering, we're building our own apps, we're doing all this stuff. And the idea is that this will be pervasive. This will be on demand as you want it. You know, if we're typically targeting 18 to 24, 18 to 25-year-olds. I want to say 75% delivery, maybe 25% pickup in a variety of styles. And the thing that I'm working on is, from the aspect of the worker, everyone starts at $20 an hour with full health benefits on day one. That's where you start. You have a 401k if you want one. Day one. Trying to think about what
attractive right off the bat, right? I mean,
yeah.
How much is that a reflection of what we've just gone through, 3 years of pandemic and so on and so forth?
Oh, it's absolutely. Well, that's the reason I joined the company.
Yeah.
I said, if we can lift tens of thousands of people in this industry up and give them at least a decent starting wage, give them healthcare, take all that stress away. And then if I can go into the kitchens and for lack of a better phrase, take the suck out of it. So if I could remove all the friolators from a menu, every chef in the world is going to be like, hallelujah. There's nothing worse than cleaning a friolator. There's nothing worse than coming home with that atomized all over you. And it's like, you feel it we've all been there. You know, that you show up at a bar and you put your arm down on the bar and it just sticks and you're just, and people are like, were you cooking fish tonight? And you're like, God damn, you know? So I think for me, I'm looking at how comfortable is the kitchen, how easy it is. You know, can you do everything on a pivot like a sushi chef? You know what I mean? Does everything happen in this era? Is it easy to order? Is it easy? I mean, we're looking at lighting that actually kills bacteria. So the whole
Super
place,
cool. Yeah,
it would just be bacteria and virus free as you worked in it. But with that, I can't get too much deeper into it, but it's expansive.
No, I'm watching.
It lives out there.
I'm watching the just exciting social media presence. You're cooking, you're talking, you're doing your media. You know, I have to ask, the geometry story, the Ramones, stand-up, radio, teaching, exercising. You've been a fanatic, I know, for years. Has it all sort of come together? Is this where Jon-Paul's supposed to be?
It is right now. So I just want to be at the tip of the spear. So everything that we're doing, it hasn't been done. So that was attractive to me. The fact that we're going to take care of workers, number one.
Yeah. Bravo.
And because I'm trying to take as much suffering as I can out of this industry. And I'm going to call it unnecessary suffering. Hard work isn't suffering, but living in an environment where you just sweat like a pig, you know, in a grimy environment, and you have busted equipment that's being held together with like a wire coat hanger to keep the oven doors. We've all been there. You know what I mean? It shows a lack of respect for the worker. And since I'm not going to have dining rooms, whatever money I had can now go into my back of the house. But we're also looking at other technology. So as I get into impingement ovens and start playing with this stuff, and I have a landscape of food that's written in pencil. Remember when Wingstop became Thigh Stop? You know what I mean? It's like, so I have 14 brands. What are the proteins I'm going to get to play with? Or is it going to be random proteins? Or is it going to be chunks of protein? Or is it going to be, am I going to have to start going more plant-based and start, you know, do I have to commission stuff to be made? You know, because we're going to be doing such stuff on such a massive level that I will need a lot of it. So what do those commodities look like next year? You know, like eggs. Whoever thought eggs would like quadruple in price
Yep.
because the breakfast menu was the most profitable thing you ever had. Now that's wiped out.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
what are you going to serve? Like, a smoothie and a bowl of steam. Like what? We're running out of food to cook. But I also look at the food and say, what's our responsibility in it? So when I look at, there are some companies right now, chicken companies that are actually buying their own chicken production facilities where they're raising their chickens, they're slaughtering their chickens just for them. They're not going to Tyson anymore, or whoever, Maryland, Foster Farms. They're not doing that. And I think as people start kind of raising their own beef, you get to take it away from that kind of soulless industrial thing. I'm sure you've been to slaughterhouses. That was part of a tour I would give to kids every 3 weeks. And I've never seen anybody in a good mood at a slaughterhouse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've never gone to Costco
tough.
and looked at the meat wrappers and they're high-fiving each other, so, and then you get into a kitchen with that stuff and it's drudgery. So as much suffering as I can take out of the industry, I mean, we have an industry, we're the only industry that's allowed to put something in someone else's body without a medical degree. That's crazy. You know what I mean? That's a lot of trust that gets put into us. And we don't treat the people well enough that are producing that food, from planting it to picking it to harvesting it, slaughtering it, packaging it, processing it. There's not a lot of happiness there.
Yeah.
So if I can do something where we can buy animals that are more humanely treated, I can invest more in plant-based proteins. I can take a fryer out of a kitchen and take 250 degrees or 250 calories out of every meal, just because I'm not frying anything. If I can just nudge that ball forward and say, this is a business of hard work, but it has integrity. There's decency in our business. There's the integrity of hard work. And today, if you're a hard worker, you're a sucker. And I don't agree with that. I think hard work is a beautiful thing. I think working with your hands is incredible. You work on your feet, you work with your hands. It's work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But how do we take the suck out of it? So that's kind of my goal with this company, as much as I can, because it was so big, it was so massive. I'm like, we have an opportunity to disrupt the industry. And if we start paying everybody $20 an hour, Marriott, all those guys that used to yell at us, like, why aren't you making students ready-made for my hotels? And you're like, well, because we're not the Marriott school, I guess, or we're not the Hilton school. But yeah, grow them up with a sense of self, a sense of this is a never-ending journey. And it's the beauty of food and music is it'll never end. There'll always be somebody smarter than me. Like, that's intriguing.
Well, I'm super proud of you and congratulations. You've got to keep us posted.
I will.
And behave in Miami, okay?
I'm doing the best I can, but it's Miami, man.
It is Miami, right?
Yeah, 20, it's like Vegas
20
with more
cars.
bikinis.
They go in a circle.
I will tell you something. This place is littered with Lamborghinis.
Yeah. Oh, I bet.
When you're at a parking lot, or when you're at a stoplight and you're driving an Integra and all around you is Lamborghinis, guess who has the most special car?
Yeah.
The Integra. Because these guys cancel each other out.
Do they give you a head start? Do they let you go? Green light. Go, Jon-Paul.
Well, no, I lean over and I'm like, it's paid for.
Hey, real quick, the name of the podcast is The Ultimate Dish. So happy that you've been here today, but I have to ask, in your mind, I think I know where you'll go. What is the ultimate dish?
For me, my final dish is a dish that you and I actually shared one night in Paris. We were with Patrick Martin, and I think it was the first night we were there. And we went to a brasserie and we had duck confit on sliced potatoes that were perfectly crisp with a bitter green salad. And that was the night I was just like, this is perfection. Yeah. Everything, the bitterness balanced off the fattiness. The leg was shatter crisp, but it was tender. It wasn't crazy salty. The potatoes just in the duck fat. That was it. Just something super simple.
Was that Benoit?
Perfection.
Was that Benoit? I think it was Benoit, right? We ate it.
Benoit is where they brought out the tureen of chocolate and then brought out the 2 towers of profiteroles. And we just sat there dunking profiteroles. That's cauldron. I don't think it was Benoit. It was really late at night.
Yeah.
And it was
now I remember. It was right around the corner. Yes. Yeah. Unpretentious. Absolutely beautiful. What a great memory.
Lots of Kiers. There were lots of Kiers that night.
Yeah. Hey, that goes in the memoir, keep me at like a chapter towards the end, right? Just maybe one paragraph, don't give all the details.
Me, Kirk, and the problem with Paris. That
would be. Oh my God. Jon-Paul, thanks so much for spending time with us today. I love you. You look great. You're happy. You're laughing. That's how I'll always think about you.
Well, my love for you is undying. We've gone through stuff that I've known you before I've known wives. Honestly,
that's a whole nother podcast.
We go back, man, several wives ago.
We do.
So yeah, you're always a thread. You're always a thread in me. You're one of those people that once a week you're going to cross my mind. You just do.
Beautiful, buddy. I love you so much. We'll have you back. We'll have you back once you can talk a little bit more.
Please. Yeah, that'd be fun.
Thank you for listening to the Ultimate Dish Podcast, brought to you by Auguste Escoffier School of Culinary Arts. Visit escoffier.edu/podcast, where you'll find any materials mentioned during the podcast, including notes, links, and other resources. You can also browse other episodes and subscribe.